plenty of articles and videos going around on what Nintendo will do for their next console. I attribute that to them being fun. Living in the anticipation phase of tech and media is great. The older I get, the more I realize that being forced to live in a state of curiosity is a good time. Only during this phase is truly anything possible. Making it even more interesting is that this is Nintendo. I can tell you what the next 15 PlayStation will probably be called. If I'm looking back, I think my prediction for the PS5 was that it called PS5 its stronger, it better graphics. Nintendo, on the other hand, is a wild card. Even if nothing what I want comes true, that's still interesting to me. Every decision Nintendo makes related to gameplay, marketing, and hardware are interesting to me. Didn't mention the legal department in that list. So here it is, another Switch 2 prediction video. You're welcome. But more specifically, this is a build out of what I want the Switch successor to be. Not necessarily what I think. This is a blend of what I want, but also what could be. This isn't the wildest fantasy Switch 2 Max Pro new. This build out is relatively grounded in reality. I think everything I go over here could actually happen, even if it's not likely. Let's be fair though, that is the lowest bar possible someone can set for themselves when talking about Nintendo, but that's the bar I'm giving myself, so. My biggest fear is that the Switch successor would be called the new Nintendo Switch, but I think we're past that. The fact that the Switch OLED was just called Switch OLED leads me to believe that we're behind the new naming convention. Besides, new is usually for console refreshes anyway. And also, we finally left behind the new Super Mario Bros. With Super Mario Bros. Wonder. New is old and old is dead. My brain tells me that the successor to the Switch would be the Switch 2. Financially speaking, it's probably a good idea to just call it the Switch 2. But Nintendo has never given their console follow-up a true sequel number. That's Sony's naming convention. It would be odd to start now. Maybe they should have. Imagine if they would have called the Wii U the Wii 2. The Wii U's problems were beyond a name, but I'm telling you, it would have sold at least marginally better as the Wii 2. Sidebar, how do you think they would have branded that? Wii 2, Wii 2, Wii 2? Wii 2? But generally speaking, a Nintendo console gets a unique name. See Famicom / Entertainment System, Game Boy, 64, GameCube, Wii, DS, and Switch. However, direct follow-up consoles are an established occurrence. See Super, Color, Advance, U, 3DS / 2DS. I think this establishes Nintendo won't be afraid to keep the word Switch. For the Switch successor, I would love to see them go with a similar naming convention as the Game Boy Advance. Advance, not advanced. I'm not the only one, right? That's a universal thing. We all thought it was advanced, or we always say advanced instead of advance. Anyway, the Game Boy Advance is a direct follow-up system to the Game Boy, which I think the Switch 2 will mostly be. Something like Switch Next would be a cool callback. I've seen Super Nintendo Switch lobbied by people. The issue here, though, is that I think the name would be more closely tied to the Switch portion of the name, as in Nintendo Super Switch. Not bad, but to fit more nicely with the Game Boy Advance naming scheme, I would love for the Switch 2 to be called Nintendo Switch Super. A beautiful blend of the Super Nintendo and Game Boy Advance. Super and Nintendo go way back, with decades of usage from system to games. So for the rest of this video, I will be referring to the Switch successor as the Switch Super. The current Switch is often compared to a PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360. Conventional wisdom has pointed to the Switch 2 being a bump up to PS4 / Xbox One levels. This is a great time to remind you that God of War Ragnarok, Elden Ring, and Halo Infinite all run on a base PS4 / Xbox One. I would bet my house it's not at the level of PS5. I'm bold like that, but I'm going to place this hardware somewhere between a PS4 Pro and an Xbox Series S. Coming close to the Series S level of hardware would be great for third-party markets. Some developers are already making games so they can run on both the Series X and S, with some pain points at times, but we're just going to gloss over that. That's not the point of this. And as Microsoft moves slightly more into publishing, it would be fabulous for the Switch Super to be able to run at least passably current-gen games. Think about it. At this level of hardware, Switch Super could run Forza, Starfield, and Halo Infinite. It hurts my back to say this, but the current Switch is 7 years old. You've heard it a bunch this year. And by the time the new Switch comes out, probably going to be at 8. So Nintendo would love to squeeze as many years possible out of the next system. Being at a Series S level could set Nintendo up for the next decade versus just something like a PS4. Look, I'm not looking for a Steam Deck, that's a different thing. And I truly don't care about 4K in this context. I don't know what context I do care about 4K personally, but that's not the point. And maybe the Switch Super will have 4K upscaling while docked, but that's not why I'm here. I just want stable, running games. Imagine playing Halo Infinite on Switch Super at 30 frames, handheld, no dips, 1080p. Some people would tell you that the Switch had an amazing launch lineup. In reality, it had an amazing launch game with Breath of the Wild, the single best launch game of any system ever, and overall the launch year was truly spectacular. It's been said a lot, but the Switch had the best Mario and Zelda game in 1 year. But what can we realistically hope for with the Switch Super, especially if it comes out in 2025? We can rule out the next tentpole Zelda game. Tears of the Kingdom, a sequel game that took 6 years to make, just came out in 2023. What about our main man Mario? We may have just had our tentpole Super Mario Brothers, but what about our tentpole Super Mario? Or said more clearly, when's the next big 3D Mario? We just got our 2D. It's been going on 7 years since a new full 3D Mario game. We had that 3D World port to make it not quite such a barren 7 years, and Bowser's Fury was an absolute treat, albeit truncated. It was a truncated treat. A tasty truncated treat. A tremendous truncated. But the world calls out for the next Super Mario game. So, the Switch Super will release day and date with the long-awaited Super Mario title. I've heard some speculation of Odyssey 2, but I think the window is completely closed. And this is completely unfounded. All of this is, mind you, but this even more so. But I truly believe that they started on DLC for Odyssey, but did the classic Nintendo, wait, this is a whole game. But it morphed even further. It became a completely different game beyond even just being an Odyssey 2. Just for funsies, what are we calling it? Super Mario Paradise? Super Mario Magic? Based on looking at synonym.com, I'm gonna call it Super Mario Quest. That sounds cool. Or Super Mario Worlds. Huh? That will be your big first-party Switch Super launch title, Super Mario Quest. The other launch games will be smaller third-party titles that won't rock the boat. However, there will be one third-party indie title that will be a massive deal, Hollow Knight Silksong. Come on, people, it's due. It fits, and would get a specific crowd tearing down the doors to get a Switch Super. If Super Mario Quest and Silksong aren't enough to push this console out the door, we can just stop making games. These two are all you need in terms of launch titles. So let's look at the launch year. I'm going to throw out 3 other big titles that fill out the calendar year. There will be a Zelda game in the launch year, but it will be in the form of a remake or re-release. The big dream would be an Ocarina of Time remake. More likely though, Nintendo finally pulls out those HD Wind Waker and Twilight Princesses. Unless they're not out or announced for holiday 2024 yet, by the time you're watching this. It's wild. I swear those are their rainy day games, just sitting in their boxes in Nintendo on the shelf. And they're like, here it is. It's time, when the world needed them most. But let's get a little more interesting. I would like to see a Link to the Past remake. I think we're in store for a 2D Zelda remake. And what better candidate than a Link to the Past? And I'm hopeful that this remake will have a different art style than Link's Awakening. I love that art style, but I love when Zelda mixes up art styles. And for this remake, I'd love to see a 2D HD style that's been so vogue lately. But for something different, the game TUNIC has a great art style, and that would really make Hyrule and Lowworld pop. And if you don't know, TUNIC is a breathtaking, high-def polygonal world. You'd think Link's Awakening remake, but not as shiny, with less of a toy aesthetic. But the big question, will Link have pink hair? No. But you can unlock it. Yeah? In fact, you can unlock the Champion's Tunic among many other outfits. I think that'd be a fun little addition to this. Why not? No reason not to. The topper is you can switch between art styles, something I've been thinking about for a Zelda game ever since Dragon Quest XI came out on the Switch. To be able to go between the full 3D graphics and the pixel art would be wonderful. I can't think of a better game series to offer something like that than the older 2D Zelda games. The other big holiday release will be the next Animal Crossing game. Animal Crossing suddenly became a top-tier Nintendo IP overnight. I mean, over a pandemic. The truly killer app for the Switch Super would be a brand new Animal Crossing, with its appeal to both hardcore and casual gamers. If you don't think hardcore gamers like Animal Crossing, I'm sorry you haven't reached enlightenment yet. I'm calling it Animal Crossing Mountain Mare. And I will not expand on that, thank you. The final launch title will be Metroid Prime 4. This game that has been only a logo for years will be absolutely fantastic, and a Game of the Year contender, and it will sell the least of all these titles mentioned. Alright, so spring 2025, your launch titles are Super Mario Quest, Hollow Knight Silksong. Launch year, early summer, you get your Link to the Past remake. Late summer, early fall, you get your Metroid Prime 4. And your fall holiday release is Animal Crossing Mountain Mare. 2026 will see Mario Kart 9 All-Stars and Super Mario Bros. The Fracas. A lot of people are saying Mario Kart 9 will be a launch title, and they are probably correct. But, you know, it's not going to need to be, because Mario Kart 8 is going to hold down the fort. In fact, it's going to be a bundle for Black Friday. But the point is, you'll be able to play your copy of Mario Kart 8 on the Switch Super. Yes, first and foremost, the Switch Super will be backwards compatible with both physical and digital media. This library is just too extensive. Both PS5 and Xbox Series are backwards compatible. And you can put your last gen disc into them. Well, the ones with disk drives. And a majority of Nintendo systems have been backwards compatible. This leads me to a debate in my head about whether Nintendo will follow suit and offer a cheaper digital-only version. Part of me thinks this is how Nintendo will offer a cheaper option, a la Switch Lite, later down the line. Because similar to the Lite, they want to launch with just the Switch Super, proper. Then later down the line, offer that cheaper digital-only version. Listen, all I know is that the next Switch will be backwards compatible, including physical games. Right? So, Street Pass is coming back. There are corners of the internet that have been asking for Street Pass to come back, or at least have a successor, since year one of the Switch. And since Zion of Nintendo Life put out that video at the beginning of 2023 making Street Pass a thing again, I've seen outlets and podcasts rooting heavily for it. So let's go for it. Of course there's going to be a Street Pass element to the Switch Super. I've decided. It will look different, obviously. First off, it's not technically free, because it's included in NSO, which we'll touch on more later. And without paying for NSO, you'll have to go without Street Pass. So you're going to pay for NSO. But where will Street Pass live is more interesting to me. Street Pass went hand in hand with Mi Plaza, and a Switch Super will need a Mi Plaza 2.0. To answer that question, we have to decide, will it have Miis? Will it have Miis though? No, but in spirit, kind of. Yes, the past two plazas, Mii Plaza and Wara Wara Plaza, were chock full of Miis. Yeah, Nintendo kind of seems like they've been flirting with the idea of moving beyond Miis. I mean, despite like my game of the year essentially having Miis in it. I point mostly towards Nintendo Switch Sports. I'd say that's a good game, but it definitely showcased a new, shiny, off-putting Sportsmate character creation. It would seem this new character creation style is what Nintendo wants to move towards and have OG Miis go out to the Moo Moo Meadow pastures. I say nay. There's two more plazas from Nintendo Past I want to look at that could be what the Switch Super's plazas look like. First, we have the Animal Crossing Plaza, which was essentially Wara Wara Plaza with Animal Crossing characters. The other is Inkopolis Plaza, or the latest version of that, Splatsville. There was a wave of internet appreciation for Splatsville when Splatoon 3 was released. It is the closest thing we have to Wii Plaza on the Switch now. And I bring up Animal Crossing Plaza and Splatsville because the plaza on the Switch Super will be akin to one of these. Both have character creators and, most importantly, vibes. For Animal Crossing Plaza, you can create a basic villager for yourself, but if you want your villager to have different clothes and more hairstyles, you can pull them from your purchased game. The next Animal Crossing is going to sell well, but imagine the push it could have if it was integrated with this new plaza. And even the inverse would be true. Animal Crossing could push people towards Street Pass. With your game connected, that also means your animal villagers can wander into the plaza. Imagine your friends, your villagers, and Street Passed folks wandering into your plaza. This makes the most logical sense, but I really do enjoy the idea of how radically different it would be if you had your avatars be Inklings and Octolings. They're wacky, hip, right? I don't know, I'm old, but I think they're hip. Creative and tailor-made to be decked out in cool fits. It would have similar customization limits and unlocks as described with the Animal Crossing Plaza. Kinda just boils down if you want your urban vibes or your rural vibes. Let's put a bow on this plaza. It would be fully saturated with Nintendo charm if it had a name that tied to Nintendo history. Hanafuda Plaza? Named after their playing cards? Would be great. It's kind of a mouthful, but that's kind of the idea I'm going for. Something that would fill my heart with joy is if it was something like Iwata Square or Satura Plaza. I don't think that's going to happen as Nintendo moves away from headquarter personalities, but these features I'm describing are quintessential Iwata to me, and it'd just be cool to call it that. So Iwata Square has to be easily accessible. So where is it on the menu? Well, first off, let's talk about how the Switch menu has its detractors, but the harsh reality is that it's exactly what it should be. I know it lacks charm and people claim their lives depend on folders, but it truly does what it's supposed to overall for most people. And the Switch Super, even in this fantasy, will not deviate from that. In handheld mode. Because this Switch Super is adaptive, and when docked, the UI is transformed to something closer to the Wii, not the Wii U. That UI was horrible. Our row of squares is now about 3, maybe 4 rows of channels. The circles that are below the squares, technical term, are now larger and docked, and here's where we find Iwata Square. So, if in handheld or docked, our plaza is within quick reach. And this new UI offers up many more options for channels similar to the Wii. I love Wii channels and I miss them. And this is something that could come back with an adaptive UI. Because it's true, in handheld, row of squares is kind of what it needs to be, right? Oh, and it has folders, I guess. Speaking of that dock, it's no longer this big, and it is closer to the size of the analog Pocket Dock. Obviously that dock is the shape of Game Boy, but the point is it doesn't cover anything really, and it's compact, it doesn't scratch any screens or trap any heat. The only problem with the Pocket Dock, other than it just not working half the time, is that it is easy to fumble as you find the USB-C plug. But I think you get the idea. Picture something like that that's easy to put the console into, looks nice, less plastic. Now this is real daydream material, but I would love if the power cord that came with it was like the Genki covert dock. That won't happen, but shout out to that Genki covert dock. I think it's cool. To get the most out of your Switch, you're paying for NSO, probably. And like it or not, the Switch Super is probably going to be the same way, and probably even more so. You're not going to use Street Pass? Come on. Fortunately, all the pass benefits remain. The pricing will not be tiered, though. You're going to have one option, $50 a year. Maybe a bump up to $60. But you're still going to get all those retro games, all of them, on one tier. And get this. How is the online infrastructure for the Switch Super? It's competent. So you get all that content, Street Pass, and a competent online. And that will make NSO a good deal. And you're gonna have no reason to not green shell out those $50 a year. JoyCons will make a return. And I'm sorry, but your old ones are not gonna fit on the Switch Super. See, these new and improved Joy-Con will have a major feature. They're not gonna drift. These new Joy-Con are slightly bigger because they're gonna have analog triggers. Picture a PS4 trigger on a Joy-Con. Lucky for us, they're gonna go ham on those different colors designs for Joy-Cons. More so than they did in the past. They're not gonna lock new Joy-Cons behind special edition consoles like they did for Tears of the Kingdom. You know, more in line with how they just released those pink Joy-Cons for Princess Peach Showtime. In fact, at some point, they're gonna have an official transparent shell Joy-Con in honor of some Game Boy Color remake. I don't know, the Zelda Oracle games could get remade and have special Joy-Cons. Just throwing it out there. So I have these modded Joy-Cons from Game Trader Zero, which I spent too much money on. But I'm dying for Nintendo to just copy them. For the love of God, please bring back official see-through video game consoles. Lo and behold, the Switch successor, the Nintendo Switch Super, coming to your local KB Toys this summer. As I said at the offset, I truly think any of this could happen. How much of me thinks it will happen? That's a great question. If I'm right about like one thing, I'm gonna become insufferable. Jokes aside, I have laid bare my slightly tempered dreams for Nintendo's next video game console. I've enjoyed it. Sitting down, writing out what it could be. You know, if anything else, it was fun to use our imagination.